So, you are going to be responsible for the material in this video. So let me ask you this question. What do you need to do to help you remember this material? Each person might do something different. You might do something similar to everybody else. Are you going to take notes? Are you going to create a graphic organizer? Are you going to pause this and listen to it as many times as you need to? Are you going to replay it as many times as you need to? Ultimately, you're responsible for the material in this video. So maybe you create a flip book. Maybe you create a graphic organizer. Maybe you take notes. Maybe those things don't help you. So every time you're on the bus, you listen to it. Maybe you find that when you walk or when you jog, you tend to think and remember stuff. So maybe you put the video in and you go for a walk. You need to figure out what is the best way for you to remember this information because you are responsible for it. So let's talk lab safety symbols. Why is lab safety so important? Lab safety is a major aspect of every lab-based science class. So starting in 7th grade, if you didn't hear it in 6th grade, you're going to start hearing it every year until you stop taking science classes. And the rules and what you'll be using in science labs will get cooler and more dangerous, should I say, as you get older. Lab safety rules and symbols are needed so that students do not injure themselves or their classmates. Here's how I work it in my class. If I am not confident that you will follow the safety rules and keep yourself and your table mates and your classmates safe, then you won't learn using a lab. You will learn a different way. Ultimately, I'm responsible to make sure that everyone in my class is safe. So if I don't think you can be safe, then I'm not going to give you that opportunity to learn that way. You'll learn a different way. Okay? So let's talk safety symbols. I'm going to talk about these safety symbols and some of these conditions, and they do apply to the science room and the science lab and a chemistry lab, but actually they also apply for your home life too. A lot of homes have cleaning supplies that could show characteristics of this. So if you go and look at some of the labels on some of your cleaning supplies, you might see some of these symbols. A lot of us know that a skull and crossbone means toxic or poison. So you should never inhale, ingest, or absorb it by your skin. Never touch, taste, or smell a chemical unless the teacher instructs you to. So don't just think that, oh, it looks like water, I'm going to taste it. Oh, it looks like water, I'm going to smell it or stick my finger in there. There are lots of chemicals that look like water that when you smell it could burn the inside lining of your nose or cause you great harm and have you go to the hospital because you smelled or because you drank it. So please don't assume that it's not toxic. Please assume it is unless the teacher tells you otherwise. It's always better to be careful than not careful. Corrosive, there's two different symbols. If you look, they're pretty similar. Corrosive is any substance that can destroy or burn living tissues and can eat away at other materials. And oftentimes these are acids or really strong bases. Just be careful with those. Flammable, that's a pretty self-explanatory picture. This is any substance that will burn if exposed to an open flame. Generally speaking, open flames come from Bunsen burners, and we don't use those in middle school. Generally, you don't use those in high school until high school. But it's not to say something might not catch on fire, so we still need to be careful. Explosive, any substance that may explode if exposed to heat or flame. We will not work with explosive materials in here. Eye protection. You're going to wear safety goggles when working with chemicals, flames, heating devices, anything that a projectile, anything that could possibly get in your eye and cause it to be damaged. If you decide not to wear your goggles, then you will have consequences. If a chemical gets in your eye, it should not if you're wearing your goggles, but if it does, you're going to notify the teacher immediately. And you and I are going to walk over to the eye wash and we are going to flush your eye out for about 15 minutes. The eye wash is on the side right near the shower. There's a little handle. We just pull it out, and there's a little contraption that kind of unfolds, and the water starts trickling out just like a water fountain. It doesn't come out hard. It's not going to hurt your eye. And we're just going to kind of hold your eye and gently stick your eye in the water. It's not any different than, swimming pool water, although this doesn't have chlorine in it. And afterwards, we'll let Mrs. Sprada know, and I'll send you down there, and she'll take a look at it, and she'll suggest whatever she thinks needs to happen. And of course, mom and dad will know, and things like that. Sharp objects. When using knives or other sharp objects, always walk with the points facing down, and always cut away from your finger and body. You all dissect. No, you didn't dissect Kyle's eye last year because of COVID. I am so sorry. But oftentimes kids come to me with some experience, sometimes with scalpels, sometimes with pointers or pins because of dissecting, sometimes with scissors. And it's always important to be careful with those. Accidents are going to happen either with sharp objects or a spill or a drop or a break. And accidents are okay. I mean, they're going to happen. I'm going to make sure that I talk to you and are you okay? Is everybody okay? Is anybody hurt? Is anybody cut? Okay, go wash your hands. Let's step away and I'll move you from that area and you'll do your lab someplace else in a different part of the room and I'll clean up. And, we'll just go about our business. Accidents happen. The issue becomes when an accident happens because of horseplay. And I'll go through the same thing and, is everybody okay? Nobody's hurt, move you guys, clean up. And then after the fact, I'll talk to the people who were horse playing and they could possibly end up with consequences. Electrical safety. Most of us already know this because this is a commonplace rule for home and school and labs. Don't place a cord where somebody can trip over it, and never use electricity around water. Always unplug all the equipment before leaving the room. If you take a look at my room, I do have lots of electrical outlets, and some just happen to be by sinks. That was not a good design. So when we do use those electrical outlets, I will often tape off the sinks so that you know not to use those sinks when we have electricity. Heat safety. So that's a picture of a Bunsen burner. We aren't going to be using Bunsen burners in middle school. Generally, you start using them in high school chemistry. We will use hot plates. They are kind of similar to the top of a stove. So they can get hot. We can boil things. They get pretty hot. You're never supposed to look into a container as you're heating it, and you're always supposed to point it away from people. If you cook, you know that when you heat things and you boil things, it bubbles and splatters. So we always need to make sure that that's not going to get on our eyes or on us. Heated metal and glass looks cool. So if I were to heat a test tube, you would not see it get red. It would look just as if it was cool. And if you were to go and grab it with your hand, you'd burn your hands. So we always want to assume everything is hot and use tongs or gloves or heating pads because it's always better to be safe than sorry. And you're never going to leave a heated source unattended. Hand safety. If a chemical spills on your hand, notify the teacher and we're going to rinse it with water under the sink for 15 minutes. Generally speaking, we're not going to have a lot of chemicals that you have to be worried about spilling on your hand. That generally comes into play in chemistry in high school, but it's a good rule to know. I will always talk about the safety of each lab before we start the lab. It'll be written on the lab sheets. So you will know ahead of time if this is a chemical you have to work with carefully. And if that's the case, I would probably provide gloves for everybody. Carry glassware carefully. I do have a few really large beakers that it's really hard to get your hand around the entire beaker. And when it's filled with water, it gets really heavy and can slide right out of your hands. So it's always important, like, to carry things with two hands just to prevent any spills or accidents. Okay, so those are some of the safety symbols. Accidents and injuries. Report all accidents and injuries to your teacher immediately, no matter how small they are. Um, I am somebody who has a boatload of allergies. And, I learn new allergies that I have all the time. And so I always, if I poke myself in a science lab when we're working with chemicals or something, I always kind of make a mental note so that if I have some kind of allergic reaction, I can connect those two. So, no matter how small it is, let me know. I'll let the nurse know. So, should you go and visit her later on in the day, she might be able to make that connection if that needs to be made. An eye accident, we're going to wash the eye out with the eye wash. We talked about that. And I'll send you to the nurse, and she'll know what happened, and she will take steps further, more than likely. Contact mom and dad, maybe suggest go have the doctor take another look at it because they have more specialized equipment. Fires and burns. So the standard is stop, drop, and roll. You learned this when you were a kid. I don't have a fire blanket in my class. I do have a shower, and most of you have already figured out that I have that. So should something spill on you and your clothes, your pants, your shirts, or you catch on fire, we're going to pretty quickly go over to the shower, and I'm going to shove you in the shower. Clothes on and all, and you're going to get super cold and super wet. And I'm going to call the nurse and tell her what happened, and she's going to come down with a big old blanket to keep you warm and walk you down to the office. Have we ever had to use an eye wash or our shower in my class? No, I have never had to use it. And the reason why we've never had to use it is because I make sure all my students know what the safety protocol is for every lab, and that I am confident if that student is doing the lab, they will follow those safety protocols. And if I'm not confident, then they don't get to learn that way. They'll learn a different way that will be safe for them and their classmates.